Electric, special, a machine, unicorn, alien, freak, a legend, one of one. All right, welcome into One of One Sports. Today we're going to be doing some start, bench, cut college football, and we're going to be doing the all-time program quarterback, or at least the best quarterback for the modern era. So let's get into it. First up, we have three Clemson quarterbacks. We have Tajh Boyd, Deshaun Watson, and Trevor Lawrence. So we'll start off with Tajh Boyd since he was the first of these to play at Clemson. So for his best accolades, he's 2012 Offensive Player of the Year in the ACC, as well as Player of the Year in the ACC. And he started basically 3 years at Clemson from 2011 to 2013. 2012 was his best year statistically, and that season resulted in Clemson going 10-2 and winning the Chick-fil-A Bowl against LSU. In 2013, similar results where they won the Orange Bowl. And in 2011, they lost the Orange Bowl. So pretty successful career for Tajh Boyd. Next up, we're going to have Deshaun Watson. Looking at Deshaun Watson's resume, he played at Clemson from 2014 to 2016, but it's mainly 2015 and 2016 were when he was the full-time starter. As far as team success, in 2015, he led them to a 14-1 record, losing the national championship to Alabama in a close game, 45-40. And then in 2016, he led them to another 14-1 record, this time with a win against Alabama in the national championship. So obviously, very winning quarterback, very successful there. Then looking at individual accolades, in 2015, he came in third in Heisman voting behind Derrick Henry and Christian McCaffrey. And in 2016, he came in second to Lamar Jackson. As far as other individual accolades go, he was an All-American in 2015, and then he won some various other quarterback awards. In 2016, he won the Manning Award. In 2015, he won the Manning Award. In 2016, he won the Johnny Unitas Golden Arm Award. And he won a lot of other quarterback awards there. So very impressive resume out of him. So now moving on to Trevor Lawrence. So Trevor Lawrence played the most out of any of these guys, starting since playing since his true freshman season. He also won the most games. He is about 95% win percentage. Deshaun Watson's at about 88 or 89%, I believe. But Lawrence only ever lost 2 games. Those are a national championship to LSU and in the playoff to Ohio State. He goes 15-0, wins the national championship as a freshman. He also finished second in the Heisman one year to Devontae Smith in 2020, and he finished 7th in 2019. And then he doesn't have all the individual accolades that a guy like Deshaun Watson did, though, at his time at Clemson, winning or being an All-American. Trevor Lawrence was never able to achieve that because he had guys like Joe Burrow or Tua or Kyler Murray in his freshman year, Joe Burrow the next year. But so Deshaun Watson does have more accolades in that realm. Now that we've compared their resumes, let's do a start bench cut for the all-time Clemson quarterback. So I think the easiest part here first is the cut. Tajh Boyd, yes, he laid the groundwork for these other two guys to succeed, but he doesn't have the individual success or the team success that the other two guys did have. Then between Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence, it gets pretty tough. Could go either way. Deshaun Watson has more individual accolades. Trevor Lawrence, probably a little more winning, but both won a national title against Alabama. Both lost a national title, but Trevor Lawrence has that third season that he did very well, that even though Deshaun Watson has more individual accolades, I'm going to bench Deshaun Watson and start Trevor Lawrence. So next up here we have 3 Alabama quarterbacks, Tua Tagovailoa, Mac Jones, and Bryce Young. So starting off with Tua, first for the individual accomplishments, he played in 2017, 2018, 2019. 2017, he was the backup to Jalen Hurts, but obviously you remember the national championship game, he subs in for him. Then second in 26, hits Devontae Smith, wins the national title as a true freshman, but didn't start the whole year, but still like an iconic moment in college football history. Then in 2018, he's great. He plays 15 games, finishes second in the Heisman to Kyler Murray in what was a really close vote. He's the SEC Offensive Player of the Year that year. He's an All-American that year. He wins the Maxwell Award. He wins the Walter Camp Player of the Year Award. So an all-time season for him in 2018. Then in 2019, he's great, but he deals with injury issues, only playing in 9 games. And when he was healthy, Alabama was not able to beat LSU that year with Joe Burrow. And then he misses the end of the season with Mac Jones playing for him. As far as team success goes, I mentioned in 2017, they won the national championship with him playing a huge role in the final game that year. Then in 2018, goes 14-1 in what was looking like maybe the greatest team ever, but they would get blown out in the championship game to Clemson and Trevor Lawrence. And then in 2019, Alabama did not make the playoff, mainly due to losing to LSU and then losing in the Iron Bowl after Tua didn't play in that game, though. Moving on to Mac Jones. So he mainly only played in 2020, as in 2018 and 2019. He just came in as a backup for Tua and finished the season in 2018. He was just a backup in general, third stringer. 2019, he's the backup for Tua, and he finishes the season after Tua gets hurt. And then in 2020, he takes over, and Alabama has, in my opinion, the greatest team of all time, or the greatest team I've ever seen, I should say, with 3 players finishing in the top 5 Heisman voting, pretty much dominating every team they play. And Mac Jones that year was a consensus All-American. He won the Davey O'Brien Award, the Johnny Unitas Award, and the Manning Award. And he also broke the all-time completion percentage record for college football. So he did have a lot of individual accolades. And like I said, he finished 3rd in the Heisman behind teammate Devontae Smith, who ended up winning it. And then behind Trevor Lawrence, who finished 2nd. And then team success, Alabama won the national championship that year. So very successful in all aspects, but I do think his team, and all Alabama teams are stacked, but his team was so stacked that maybe he gets a little bit inflated by that. So now moving on to Bryce Young. He was at Alabama from 2020 to 2022, but in 2020 he's the backup for Mac Jones, and then he takes over in 2021 and still plays in 2022. So once he takes over in 2021, he wins the Heisman Trophy, takes Alabama to the national championship game, but loses to Georgia. That year he's an All-American, Heisman winner, SEC Offensive Player of the Year, and he also wins the AP Player of the Year, the Consensus All-American, Davey O'Brien, Heisman Memorial Trophy, Manning Award, Maxwell Award. So a great season for him. And then in 2022, he returns, but Alabama's a little bit disappointing that year. He comes in 6th in the Heisman voting, so still very good, but not nearly as good as his first year under center was. And then Alabama does not make the college football playoff that year. They lose 2 games that season, what's pretty disappointing by their standards. And those games, they lost the Tennessee game where the fans took in the river, and then the LSU game. And that was a year where just Alabama won some close games, beating A&M, beating Texas, and Ole Miss, but then they lost a couple of close games. But in my opinion, Bryce Young was carrying that team, and it was just so much more of a limited team than, for example, the one Mac Jones had. So when you look at these resumes, we've got Mac Jones, who's the only one who really led a team to a national championship while starting the whole year. They're all technically national champions, but Bryce Young never played on the team that won the national title. Tua did, but he only helped in that last game. And then Bryce Young's the only one to win a Heisman. The others came close, though. So now that we've looked into the resume, let's do the start bench cut. So maybe controversially, I'm going to cut Mac Jones. Yes, he broke the all-time completion percentage record. Yes, he's the only one who led a team for a national title the whole year, but I don't think that's because he was the best quarterback. He had guys like Najee Harris and Devontae Smith, who are also top 5 in Heisman, and he just had a team so talented around him. between Bryce Young and Tua Tagovailoa. I'm going to bench Tua. I almost started Tua, but I think a few more injury concerns with Tua, and he just wasn't as consistent in terms of playing because of the injury concerns. And Bryce Young, I thought, was carrying one of the least talented Alabama rosters in my lifetime, or at least productive, and was consistently making clutch plays and keeping Alabama as one of the top programs. And he's the quarterback that I would start out of these three. Next up, we have the Oregon Ducks. And our three quarterbacks here are going to be Marcus Mariota, Justin Herbert, and then Bo Nix most recently. Marcus Mariota played at Oregon for 3 years from 2012 through 2014. So in 2012, as a true freshman, he led Oregon to a 12-1 record, only losing an overtime game to Stanford. And then this was the BCS era, so they were unable to make the national title game that year. And he defeated Kansas State in the Fiesta Bowl to finish 12-1. Then playing in 2013, he had a good season, not as good as the year before, as Oregon would go 11-2. And then in 2014 was when he had his best season yet, as Oregon would make the college football playoff, going 12-1 as Pac-12 champions, avenging their only loss against Arizona, and then destroyed Jameis Winston and Florida State in the first round of the playoff before losing the national title game to Ohio State. And that was the first year that the playoff was implemented. And then in 2014 was by far his best year statistically. He won the Heisman in 2014. He was consensus All-American unanimously in 2014. He won the Manning Award. He won the Maxwell Award. He won Pac-12 Offensive Player of the Year. He won, let's see, what else did he win? He wins the Davey O'Brien Award, the Johnny Unitas Award, the Maxwell Award. So he's just piling up the awards in 2014 to go with his Heisman, which he won over Melvin Gordon and Amari Cooper. So he's clearly the best player in the country in 2014. Moving on to Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert played at Oregon from 2016 to 2019, but only really emerged as a great quarterback for 1 year in 2019. In 2016 as a freshman, he only played the back half of the year. And then Oregon as a program was down in 2017, 2018, and they were just like rebuilding under him. And then 2019 is finally when it all came back together. He leads them to an 11-2 record in the regular season, becoming Pac-12 champions, and then defeating Wisconsin in the Rose Bowl. He never, even in that season, he didn't really compete for the Heisman or an All-American or any major awards like that. So the resume, not nearly as good as Marcus Mariota. So now moving on to Bo Nix. So in Bo Nix's first season in 2022, Oregon would go 9-3, and Nix would have a pretty good year, but nothing great. They wouldn't win any major championships. And then in 2023, he finishes third in Heisman voting, breaks the all-time completion record or percentage record previously set by Mac Jones, and leads Oregon to a very good 11-1 season in the regular season, but then loses the Pac-12 championship to go 11-2, and loses to Washington, and then defeats Liberty to finish the season 12-2. So statistically, very good, but never won any major championships. And he was Pac-12 Offensive Player of the Year in 2023, being his most major award won. So we've compared the resumes. Let's do start, bench, cut for these Oregon quarterbacks. So I think the hardest one is going to be who I'm going to cut here, and I'm actually going to cut Bo Nix. Yes, statistically, probably a little bit better than Herbert, but Herbert in that final year, I think you could see all the talent. He won a Pac-12 championship, which Nix never did, and that led me to just give Herbert the edge and be the bench here. Yes, only one great season of production, but he kind of rebuilt Oregon, or helped to rebuild Oregon as a program, which I think is very important. And then clearly the start here is Marcus Mariota, won the Heisman, was so good in 2014, and clearly the best Oregon quarterback of the modern era. All right, so now we have the Ohio State Buckeyes. So looking at these quarterbacks, we're going to have J.T. Barrett, Justin Fields, and C.J. Stroud. So starting off with J.T. Barrett, he plays there from 2014 to 2017. In 2014, he plays most of the year, but at the end of the season, he's hurt. Cardale Jones takes over. Ohio State wins the national title. Then in 2015, he kind of splits reps with Cardale Jones. And Ohio State does very well but doesn't make the college football playoff. In 2016, Barrett is now the full-time starter there, and Ohio State does very well once again, makes the college football playoff, but then is crushed by Clemson. And then in 2017, Barrett is full-time starter, and Ohio State does not make the college football playoff, but wins the Cotton Bowl. So he was very successful, and he played a very long time at Ohio State, basically 4 seasons as an important player. Not all the time was he a full-time starter, but definitely helped Ohio State all the time. But he was never like a Heisman contender or like a star quarterback. He came in 5th in Heisman voting in 2014, which was the year that they won the national title, but he didn't even finish that year, and that was the highest he ever got as a contender for the Heisman. So now moving on to Justin Fields. He starts his career at Georgia, but then transfers over to Ohio State, where he plays 2 seasons. In those 2 seasons, he comes in 3rd in Heisman voting in 2019, just behind Jalen Hurts, but pretty far behind Joe Burrow. And then 7th in 2020, the COVID year, where Ohio State didn't play as many games. So in those years, 2019, Ohio State goes to the playoff, loses a really close game to Clemson and Trevor Lawrence. And then in 2020, takes them back to the playoff, this time defeats Trevor Lawrence, but loses the national title game to Alabama in a blowout. But still he led them to 2 great seasons, and he was Big Ten Offensive Player of the Year both years. So pretty accomplished individually, and led them to a lot of team success. So if we look at CJ Stroud, how does he stack up against these two? He also plays just 2 years. As his first year, he sits behind Justin Fields. In these years, he comes in 4th in Heisman voting in 2021, his first year, and 3rd in 2022. But neither year is he really that close to winning it. And because even though he's great statistically, and he's Big Ten Offensive Player of the Year both years, he never beats Michigan. And first year, they don't make the playoff because of it. Second year, they're still able to sneak into the playoff. But they lose to Georgia in the first round, where he plays probably the best game of his collegiate career. So that's CJ Stroud's resume. So we've looked at all the resumes. Let's do the start bench cut for these Ohio State quarterbacks. And even though I think he's by far the best quarterback on this list now, especially in the NFL, I have to cut CJ Stroud. I think if you're the Ohio State quarterback, you have no Big Ten championship wins, no wins against Michigan as the starting quarterback. I think with what these other guys did, you've got to be cut from this list. Then on the bench, got to put JT Barrett. He kind of lays the foundation. He is technically the quarterback for a team that won the national title, although he didn't play in that game. He played a long time, always beat Michigan, very accomplished player. And then I'm going to start Justin Fields. He was the best mixture of team success and individual success, and was a great college player, and I think the best Ohio State quarterback in recent memory. All right, so finally we have the Oklahoma Sooners. We have Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, and Jalen Hurts. So starting off with Baker Mayfield, he plays 1 year at Texas Tech, but then transfers to Oklahoma, sits a year, and then plays 2015, 2016, and 2017. In 2017, he wins the Heisman, comes in 3rd in 2016, 4th in 2015, and is the only player to ever do that. He's an All-American the year he wins the Heisman. He's the 2015 and 2017 Big 12 Offensive Player of the Year. He is also the AP Player of the Year that year, an All-American, the Davey O'Brien winner, the Manning Award winner, the Maxwell Award winner, and the Walter Camp Player of the Year winner. And Oklahoma also has a lot of team success in those years that he's there. They go to the playoff with him multiple times. One more successful. Well, they both lose in the first round, but the 1 year he challenges Georgia, they come very close, lose in overtime, and that's the year that he won the Heisman. And that was probably the best Oklahoma team of the Lincoln Riley era. 2016 didn't make the playoff, but in 2015 they did, but lost in the semifinal game to Clemson. Now moving on to Kyler Murray, also a transfer, comes in from Texas A&M, sits a year, and then sits behind Baker Mayfield, and then plays 1 year at Oklahoma, and he wins the Heisman that year. His awards for that year, pretty much same as Baker. He's going to be Big 12 Offensive Player of the Year, the AP Player of the Year, the Davey O'Brien winner, obviously the Heisman, and then the Manning Award winner. Leads Oklahoma to the playoff as well, and they lose in the first round to Alabama. So another Heisman winner, but only does it for 1 year. Then Jalen Hurts also transfers in. This time he comes from Alabama, plays 1 year at Oklahoma, similar to Kyler, and he finishes second in Heisman voting and behind Joe Burrow that year. So he wasn't that close to winning it because Joe Burrow kind of ran away with it. But he is, I believe, Big 12 Player of the Year, and he leads them to the playoff where they would lose to LSU. But so that's the resume for all of them. Let's do the start bench cut. I think Jalen Hurts was a great player at Oklahoma, good player overall, but he was only there 1 season, and he's the only one out of these 3 who didn't win the Heisman Award, and that makes him a pretty clear third place. Then between Kyler and Baker Mayfield, it's arguable who's actually better, but because of Baker Mayfield doing it for longer and being consistently a Heisman finalist 3 times at Oklahoma, I have to bench Kyler and start Baker Mayfield for the all-time Oklahoma Sooners quarterback. Alright guys, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, you might enjoy my other start bench cuts that'll be coming out, or my other college football content on the channel. Until next time,